Hi, my name is Brian Caffo. I'm a professor in the Department of Biostatistics at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and this is the rCharts lecture, part of the Data Products class in the Coursera Data Science Specialization. This class is co-taught by my co-instructors Jeff Leake and Roger Pang. So rCharts, is a really awesome little piece of software. So it's basically just a way to create interactive JavaScript visualizations using R. So what this means is you don't have to learn complicated tools like D3, but if you really want to get into this kind of stuff, you need to learn D3 and JavaScript really well. You can simply work in R with a minimal amount of new syntax learning. And rCharts was written by Ramnath, a close friend of the data science series, who also wrote slidify, the framework we use for all the lectures in the class. And rCharts can be embedded in slidify, and I'll show you that in the process of doing this lecture. At any rate, rCharts is fairly well documented, but more, I guess, better than documentation is the kind of flurry of Stack Exchange topics about it. And so, basically I'm just going to go through the documentation here with you. So what rCharts is, so you have to install it, and the documentation of course shows you how to install rCharts. You install it from GitHub. So you want to do library required rCharts. Hair is here just reformatting a data frame from this dataset hair color. And so the basic function for a specific type of rChart is nplot. So nplot calls a specific JavaScript plotting library. And in this case, notice the syntax. It's pretty familiar, right? So we want the frequency plotted as it depends on hair color, almost like a linear model. And here we want it grouped by eye color, and the type is multi-bar chart. And here there's just some data subsetting, so you specify a data command. So it actually looks an awful lot like LM. If you do this in R without that there, don't assign the plot to a value, it brings up the plot. If you assign the plot to a value, for me it's not bringing up the plot, but then this object has, list element has a bunch of objects saved in it. And so for one is the function save, and then you just can grab that function save and give it a name. In this case, I wanted to name this plot n1.html, and it saves an HTML file with the relevant code in it to produce the plot. And so here now, when I want to embed it back into slidify, I actually type this command, icat, which is just print out this iframe where I source in this HTML, and Ramnath said that was sort of best practices for embedding a rChart into slidify. But if you don't want to embed it into slidify, you could just either type n1 by itself on a command line, or forget assigning n1 to a plot, just type nplot and you'll get the plot that we see. Okay, let me just give a couple caveats here. Is that I just had to actually stop the video and rerun a bunch of things because I was working across different computers, and I had to reinstall the latest version of slidify and the latest version of rCharts to get the embedding within R to run. Otherwise, it seems to be that rCharts seems to have no problems. It's this idea of embedding rCharts into slidify that is maybe a little finicky. At any rate, it seems like I got it to work now. So here's the N1 plot, and you can see the colors on the horizontal axis right here, the hair colors, right? And then you see the eye colors as the actual colors of the bars, right? And if you hover over a bar, it gives you the frequency and the information on hair and eye color, right? And so this interactivity comes with very little cost, and you can even do stuff like switch between grouped and stacked bar plots, and notice it has kind of a nice animation when it does it, right? And so remember, right, the code to do that was really just this one line right there. So really nice. N1 is really, or NVD3 was really a nice JavaScript library. So Slidify Interactive is what I'm using to embed these graphics into Slidify. Later on we'll have lectures on Slidify that you can watch. These are the commands. If you Google on Slidify Interactive, Ramnath will go through the examples. It's kind of a non-trivial endeavor to do this, so I'm just putting it out there that this is what I'm doing for this exercise, but you can actually just view the things directly in R or have it launch a web page. Just a couple of thoughts. So the object N1 contains the plot. In RStudio, typing N1 brings up the plot in the RStudio viewer, or you can just assign it to an object. If you do N1 asterisk and then tab, you see the various functions contained in the objects. For example, N1 HTML prints out the HTML. N1 save file name is what I'm using to bring it back into a Slidify document. The save function just saves an HTML document with the plot embedded in it. So let's just deconstruct another example. For the time being, just think forget about that command, and that we've reformatted the data in the form that we want, and we still want to have an outcome sepal length plotted as a function of sepal width, and conditioning on species. Okay, so that seems like pretty reasonable notation for that kind of plot. This is rplot from a different graphics library, and I'm going to assign it to the variable r1 like before. If I didn't do that, it would just show the plot. Data equals iris, color equals species, type equals point are options for the specific kind of plot. The options aren't terribly well documented in rCharts, but I think, like I said, you can search on the internet and get a lot of examples. And basically you can work around with the examples. And so here you see how it does the grouping, and then it's doing the dot plot. So here's the species is the color, sepal width is the horizontal axis, and it breaks it up into several plots. But you can see you get this nice interactive highlight mouse over with the points. Okay. Here's a so-called faceted bar plot, and then it's just changing type equals bar, right? And I assigned it to the variable r2, and then remember that other stuff, this was just so that I can bring it back into Slidify. Otherwise you would just work with the object r2. You wouldn't have to reprint it out you wouldn't have to cat the plot out into that's what's embedding it into Slidify for me. So again, you see it's basically the same plot, but you've switched it to a bar plot. So how do you get the JavaScript / HTML or publish in our chart? So here's my plotting command. Print just prints out the relevant JavaScript notation. Saves it as an HTML file. Publish, you can publish it to gist, which is just a quick GitHub snippet of code. You have to have the package rJSON installed to do that. You can save it to rpubs, which is a collection of R graphics, and so on. But I like to put them into Slidify documents is what I like to do, but that's maybe a little bit more finicky, but once you get used to it, that's what I like to do. So let's just go through some more examples to see the sorts of things you can do with rCharts. So I would notice that Ramnath mentions that the IO 2012 style for HTML slides and polycharts seem to have some conflicting JS. They seem to be working fine for me, but I do get errors if I load this polychart library. So if you're debugging with polychart and IO style, factor that in. If you're embedding rCharts into Slidify, if you're not, then none of this is relevant for you. If you're grabbing the HTML or doing something else. So here's this plotting package called Morris, and what I like about Morris, you can see that the plot here. My X is date, and my Y, I'm giving two Ys. Where here it's two columns and my type is line. I really like this plot. This is a nice time series plot. because what it shows is you have these nice time series, but as you move it along, you can see it keeps the points constant in a horizontal line between the grouping variables. So you can kind of see, here in 1980, between the two different grouping variables, what the values were. Okay, so this is actually a really nice, nice little plot. rCharts, here's just another one. This is what this example looks like. I'm not too enthusiastic about this one, but maybe rCharts has a lot of other stuff. I don't actually really know. Leaflet's a mapping library, so here's an example of using Leaflet. So here's Leaflet new, right? And I'm setting the view for the specific location, exactly setting the zoom level, and so on. And this will show you. You'll see what setting these markers does when I go onto the next page. And then the save function is just saving it like before. Now map 3 is in rChart, so it has all the same fields that any other rChart does. So here I'm using save, and then this cat is just to bring it into slidify. And then you see here in my presentation is my map. You can zoom, and and if you hover over, you see that I'm a pop-up. I'm another pop-up. So you see how you can set the pop-ups at specific longitude and latitude locations. So Leaflet's pretty neat. So if you need to create a map, and there's he has a new kind of documentation for the set of different kind of mapping things you can do, and Leaflet is pretty cool. Rickshaw is another one that he shows. You can go through the code, but you can get things like this. It has a nice a nice little bit of interactive graphics you can get, and then it has a slider, right? So you can slide over time and see how how these kind of continuous bar charts change over time. That's kind of nice. rChart, here's another one. I'm not 100% sure exactly what rChart. This plot seems really quite confusing to me, but it does seem to have a lot of interactivity, and I think the reason it's confusing is because he's just trying to highlight, not because he's trying to create a perfect plot, but that he's trying to sort of highlight, oh, here's how you get the line, the bubble, and the scatter for the different types, right, for the grouping variable, and that's why you get for the grouping variable get the different ones. So you see it's actually quite easy. It makes kind of an ugly, somewhat sort of useless plot, but it shows the bubbles, the size of the bubble is related to the what is the size is related to age, and so you can go through that example, but that's why I believe he's doing it. And it's nice because you do see things like this that are very hard to do in R, like the transparent overlays and things like that are quite hard to do. So at any rate, I'm hoping that going through these examples shows you that basically I find to use rCharts is you kind of find an example that's close enough to what you need to do and tinker around with it, and you may have to dig through the Stack Exchange post. So what I would say is rCharts makes creating interactive JavaScript visualizations very easy. But if you want to customize rCharts, then you're going to really need to know the underlying internals of the JavaScript libraries. Ramnath has told us that he's working on kind of a giant collection of master documentation, and I think that will help. That will help you customize. The documentation will help a lot. But even probably after that documentation is completed, you're still going to need to know some JavaScript in order to really make use of this. So if what you want to do is not too big of a deviation from the several rCharts examples, then it's awesome, which is great because rCharts has a lot of examples. And then otherwise, it's a little challenging to extend. And rCharts is still under development, and I think it's easily the best package right now, or one of two of the best packages for creating JavaScript visualizations using R. The other probably being Google Viz, which we'll have a lecture on as well. but it's a very nice tool, and it takes, to get it at the level that I'm presenting it at this presentation, it only should take you a little bit of time to learn, maybe a little, getting through a couple of the annoyances. It shouldn't be too bad, but the other thing I would mention is it is quite nice to be able to embed into slidify documents. However, I would once again really caution, if that's your goal, to always have the latest version of slidify libraries, rCharts, and RStudio all installed, and that will very much so help you avoid some of the problems. The other thing I would mention is to delete sort of the assets and other kind of temporary libraries that slidify and in the old graphs that you've saved, and recompile if you're having errors. These things all seem to help me to get the slidify rCharts combination debugged.